listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Marie Murphy. This podcast is all about expanding the conversation around infidelity. I'm a relationship coach, and I specialize in helping people who are engaging in some form of infidelity deal with their feelings, clarify what they want, and make decisions about what they're going to do. I offer shame-free, blame-free, non-judgmental relationship coaching, and you can talk to me about the things that seem too messy or weird or stigmatized to share with your best friend or your spouse or even your therapist. To learn more about my work or to schedule an introductory coaching session with me, go to my website, mariemurphyphd.com. All right. Today, I'm going to talk about contradictions and why we need to make peace with our contradictions if we want to resolve them. And in so doing, I am going to tell you a story about myself, which involves dog poop. And by the end of this episode, you may think that I have a shit fetish of some sort, which I don't. Not that it would be a bad thing if I did, but I really don't. But I do have a dog, so dog poop is a pretty big part of my life. Before I get to that, though, I want to add a little postscript to the episode on new relationship energy that came out several weeks ago. In that episode, I talked about how important it is to recognize new relationship energy as a very particular sort of experience that can be very intensely wonderful and potentially somewhat intoxicating. And I suggested in that episode that even though it behooves us to be conscious of the potential for new relationship energy to sweep us off our feet in a dramatic way, that doesn't mean we need to be overly suspicious of it. Sometimes people talk about new relationship energy as if it's just a mirage. And I agree that sometimes we can become totally besotted with someone new, only to find that the spell wears off pretty quickly. Some relationships that seem amazing in their initial stages fizzle out pretty quickly once the initial excitement has faded. But I also emphasized in that episode that sometimes a good thing is just a good thing. Sometimes new relationship energy is an indication of great things to come, or can be leveraged into creating a great future for a relationship. And to that point, I recently finished listening to the audio version of Hunter Biden's memoir called Beautiful Things. And if you don't know who Hunter Biden is, he is the son of our current president. And he has had an interesting go of things, as you may well know. I have been somewhat aware of his trajectory for a while now, but I think I became particularly interested in what he was up to when I learned that he was romantically involved with his deceased brother's widow. As you might imagine, those sorts of dynamics are very interesting to me. And then I'm a faithful reader of The New Yorker, which probably tells you a lot about me. And in July 2019, there was an article that came out by, I'm going to butcher the name, by Adam Entuis. Sorry, Adam. Sorry about butchering your last name. But the article was entitled, Will Hunter Biden Jeopardize His Father's Campaign? And I read that article with great interest, and I became much more interested in Hunter Biden as a result. Now, full disclosure, at the time, I was very worried indeed that Hunter Biden might jeopardize his father's campaign. And so I read the profile of him in The New Yorker with that concern lurking in the corner of my mind. To give you a very simplistic summary of the article, it had been written just as Hunter Biden had been clean off of crack for a matter of days, I think. And he had just gotten married to a woman he had met just as recently, who he had proposed to and married within like 2 days of meeting her or something like that. And I'm not getting the details exactly right, and I apologize for that. But I'm incorrect only by a small order of magnitude. They might have known each other for like a week when they got married. Maybe it was 10 days. And so when I read about all of this at the time, I was like, okay, guy, you just got off crack. You just quit drinking or have significantly cut back. And you just got married to someone you'd known for like a week. How is all of this going to turn out? I wouldn't say that I regarded his situation in a disparaging way, but I think it's fair to say that I might have been a little skeptical about how his marriage was going to unfold. But because I don't make it my business to get overly concerned about other people's business, I mentally wished him well and then basically stopped thinking about him and his romantic life. Until, of course, I listened to his memoir just recently. And in it, he talks about a lot of things, including his romantic life in the past and his experience of meeting the woman he is now married to. The woman he married after knowing her for just a few days and who he's still married to. And hearing about his experiences in his own words was very interesting after hearing about his experiences through so many other people's perspectives, of course. He talks about how he met his current wife. He talks about how they decided to get married. And of course, it all happened pretty fast by many people's standards. But here's the thing that hearing him talk reminded me of so effectively. Many people's standards don't have to be our standards. From what I have learned from Google, he and his wife are still married. They may have gotten married within 17 minutes of meeting each other. And of course, I'm joking here. But the whole thing did not implode in spectacular fashion as quickly as it started. And the point of this, even if I don't know all of the details of his personal life, is that sometimes a good thing is just a good thing. Sometimes good things happen quickly and under unusual circumstances. And sometimes they continue to be a good thing, even if they happen quickly and begin under unusual circumstances. And so I just want to reiterate that even if our judgment can be distorted, shall we say, by new relationship energy, that isn't necessarily the case. New relationship energy is not inherently bad, and we need not mistrust good beginnings solely because they are good. All right. We are now heading towards the conversation about dog poop. But I'm going to preface that story by saying a few things about contradictions in general and contradictions in our lives that have to do with infidelity. So contradictions, generally speaking, are combinations of opposing elements. They can also be defined as people or things or situations in which inconsistent elements are present. I'll say that again. Contradictions can also be defined as people or things or situations in which inconsistent elements are present. And many of us, if not most of us, if not all of us, have contradictions in our lives. And of course, this is true for many of my clients who are engaged in some form of infidelity. For instance, many of the clients who come to me tell me they don't really want to be cheating on their spouse or their partner, or they don't really want to be involved with someone who is cheating on their spouse or partner. Many of my clients tell me they don't like the dishonesty and deception associated with infidelity. On the other hand, they may also sort of like it, but we'll get to that later. Many of my clients tell me they don't like the emotional roller coaster ride that goes along with having an affair. Many of my clients tell me they feel really bad about doing something that could potentially hurt other people. And many of my clients feel heavily burdened by their secret and worried about what might happen in the future and pretty darn freaked out about some aspects of their infidelity situation, or maybe all of the elements of it. And feeling bad about what you're doing or some aspects of what you're doing can be exhausting and overwhelming and draining. Doing things we don't really want to be doing can seem confusing. If we believe we're doing things that aren't like us, so to speak, or are out of alignment with our values, we may think we don't know ourselves the way we used to, and this can seem unnerving. So it's no surprise that sometimes people attempt to resolve their infidelity situation by taking action impulsively. Sometimes people will dramatically end things with their affair partner, believing that will solve their problems and rid them of the contradiction that they feel so burdened by. And sometimes taking drastic action works, but often it doesn't. And here's why. When we are trying to resolve a contradictory situation in our lives, or when we are trying to stop doing something, we have to figure out what we are getting out of the situation or what we're getting out of whatever it is that we're doing first. So when clients come to me and they're cheating on their spouse and they tell me they feel really bad about what they're doing, I always try to slow them down and ask them what's amazing about their affair. I ask them what they love about their infidelity situation. And usually there are many things that people love about their infidelity situation or think is amazing about their affair and amazing about their affair partner. But sometimes they have a hard time admitting this stuff because they believe they aren't allowed to enjoy the good aspects of their situation since, so the logic goes anyway, they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. And I understand how people can come to this conclusion, but here's the deal. You have to be able to acknowledge what's great about your infidelity situation if you want to resolve the contradictions it presents in your life. Yes, you may feel bad about cheating on your spouse. Yes, you may feel bad about being involved with someone else's spouse. Or maybe you don't feel bad about the infidelity per se, but you really dislike the uncertainty associated with your situation. Maybe you don't want to put yourself in a position where other people could blame you for the end of a marriage or the dissolution of a family. Whatever it is you don't like about the situation, focusing on that alone will not help you resolve your contradictory state of affairs. In order to do that, you've got to acknowledge what you're getting out of the situation and recognize the value those benefits have for you before you can make clear decisions and follow through on those decisions by taking action. And I now will illustrate what I mean by talking about dog poop. So I am the proud owner / parent of a West Highland White Terrier named Seymour, and he is the best thing ever. And I love him so much. And I'm kind of a crazy dog person, and I'm totally okay with that. And for as long as my spouse and I have had Seymour, we have lived in various apartments and condos, and we've not had a house with a yard. So for as long as we've had our darling creature, we've had to take him out multiple times a day to walk him and let him go to the bathroom. And, this has been part of our routine for the last 12 years. Okay. So that's a long time. That's a lot of dog poop. And for pretty much this entire time, I have been responsible for taking Seymour out during the first half of the day, which includes the mornings. And my spouse has taken care of him for the latter part of the day, for the most part. And in many respects, this division of labor has been fine with me. However, in the mornings, I, like many other people, am usually trying to get things done on a schedule. My morning activities have changed many times over the course of the last 12 years we've had Seymour. But one thing has remained pretty consistent. I'm usually trying to get things done in the mornings within a particular time frame. And I must confess that I have never mastered the habit of building ample time into my schedule for taking Seymour on a leisurely walk the second time he needs to go out. When I take him out first thing in the morning, it's a pretty straightforward affair. He does his business very efficiently 99% of the time, and it's easy stuff. But the second time I take him out is another story. He will poop and pee on that second bathroom outing, but historically, the amount of time he's taken to do his business has varied quite a bit. And what this meant for years was that I was often in the position of trying to give Seymour a leisurely walk so that he could have enough time to work up the inspiration to empty his little canine colon, while I was also in a rush to get on with whatever I had to do that morning. And I usually didn't build quite enough time in the mornings to give Seymour however long he needed, 20, 30 minutes to do his business. And as a result, I was always agitated for his sake and for mine. And although this task wasn't exactly a daily struggle, it was pretty darn close to that. So, this was my morning drama for years, trying to get Seymour to poop for a second time when he had all the time in the world and I did not, or at least I believed I did not. And then I discovered a magic trick. There is this small area of land on the side of the building I live in where not all that much happens. It's not an area where people hang out or would want to. It's not an area that many people can even see. It's a small patch of land that the old landscaping crew used to sort of manage, and the new landscaping crew completely ignores. So it's basically a bunch of dirt and some dead branches and some alive but unruly plants. And for a long time, I never took Seymour out there, even though it would have been incredibly convenient for me to do so, because a couple of neighbors' kitchen windows overlook this little piece of land. And I didn't want to unnecessarily lurk outside of their kitchen windows and potentially invade their privacy. But then something changed, and I can't remember exactly how or why I decided to make use of this little patch of land for the purpose of taking Seymour out. But at some point I did. And I quickly learned that when I would take Seymour out there for his second bathroom run of the day, he would poop pretty much instantly, which was awesome. It solved a major ongoing problem for me. Instead of dawdling around for an indefinite amount of time that I definitely had not budgeted into my schedule in the mornings while Seymour sniffed every possible smell before getting around to pooping, and then having to pick up the poop and take it to the outside garbage can and then back to where I live, I could just take him out the side door and he would do his business right there and we'd be done in like 3 minutes. This was a major win. But I felt very bad about this for 2 reasons. One was the privacy thing. It's really important to me to respect other people's space and respect other people's privacy to the best of my ability. And although this space to the side of my building isn't by any means off limits to me, I thought and still think that it would be much more courteous of me to avoid being in that space for the sake of not unnecessarily hanging out in front of my neighbor's kitchen windows. And of course, the other reason was the dog poop. Under most circumstances, I am incredibly scrupulous about picking up dog poop. I always have a poop bag on me. It is so important to me to pick up after my dog. And there is a lot more I could say about that. I could go on and on about that. But the point is, I consider myself a person who picks up dog poop. Even if I am all alone in the middle of nowhere and no one would see me not picking up after my dog, I still pick up after him, with one exception. When I take my dog to the area on the side of the building, I don't pick up his poop, because if I did, I would either have to walk the poop to the outdoor trash can that is several minutes walk away, or I would have to bring a bag of dog poop inside my building with me and then throw it away inside. And I don't really want to do either of those things. The whole point of taking Seymour outside to this magical Instapoop area is to get the business done super efficiently. And picking up his poop, and going all the way over to the trash can would not be as efficient. And bringing the poop inside just doesn't seem right to me, not to mention that I don't really want to do it. What if one of my neighbors saw me coming inside with a bag of dog poop in my hand? That would be weird and gross, I think. Not that letting my dog poop outside and not pick it up isn't gross and weird, but it's a different sort of gross and weird in my estimation. Okay. At first, this contradictory behavior of mine wasn't that much of a problem because I didn't do it very often. When I first discovered this magical morning time saver, I only did it now and again. It was like my little emergency backup plan for when I was really short on time. And I would periodically go and pick up all of the poop that I had left and take it to the outdoor trash. And, I felt okay about myself. Then it became a more frequent habit. And then it became the new normal. And before I knew it, I was regularly engaging in a behavior I felt very conflicted about. On the one hand, being able to take Seymour out that second time and have him do his doggy business quickly was great. And I also felt very bad about not picking up his poop and potentially invading my neighbor's privacy. And when I say I felt very bad about this, I mean, I actively berated myself for doing this. I really believed that I shouldn't be doing what I was doing. And to be honest, like I really, when I first had the idea to record this podcast episode, I was like, oh my God, am I really going to talk about this? This is so embarrassing. And then I was like, yeah, I am going to talk about this. This is exactly why I should talk about this. This is the perfect reason and example to talk about contradictions. So, here's the thing. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you've probably heard me say this before. You can't shame yourself or should yourself into making sustainable, positive changes. Self-acceptance is a far better motivator of change than self-reproach. And part of self-acceptance is recognizing what you get out of doing things you think you shouldn't be doing, or think you aren't supposed to be doing, or feel conflicted about doing. And in my case, yeah, I feel bad about not picking up dog poop. But the benefits I get from not picking it up in the time and place I've been talking about are really, really valuable to me. And if I want to change my behavior, I have to acknowledge the value I get out of doing what I've been doing. Having this time-saving magic trick in the mornings is something I value. And that has made it worth tolerating the discomfort of the contradictions within the situation. And if I want to change that behavior, I have to recognize what I value about what I'm doing, and that I may need to actively figure out how to accommodate this preference in some other way or resolve the contradiction in some other way. So, here's what this might mean. If it's so important to me to both respect my neighbor's privacy by staying out of this little area to the side of my building, and if it's so important to me to pick up after my dog, I could do any number of things to address the situation. I could get rid of my dog. That would be one solution. I'm definitely not going to do that, but I could. And it would resolve the contradiction I've been talking about, although it would also have other consequences that I would not like. I could make a point of getting up half an hour earlier in the morning so that I could let Seymour take a proper walk and do his business elsewhere, and I could pick up his poop and put it in the garbage without being pressed for time. For the purposes of this episode, the point isn't really how I would go about resolving this contradiction. It's that if I want to resolve it, I have to be able to look at what I'm doing in neutral terms. I have to stop beating myself up for doing something that I think is wrong and be able to look at the costs and benefits of my behavior without shaming myself for what I'm doing. It's a totally different ballgame when we can look at our so-called problematic behaviors in neutral terms. Okay. With that said, let's move away from the discussion of dog poop and bring the focus back to infidelity. For instance, when people tell me that they feel really bad about cheating on their spouse, but they've been feeling alone in their marriage for a long time, and they've been starving for connection and intimacy and romance and affection and sensual pleasure and sexual pleasure, they sometimes try to tell me that they shouldn't want those things. They sometimes try to tell me that the main point of their situation is that they shouldn't be having an affair. And here's the thing. If that is your situation, it is okay to prefer to not cheat on your spouse. It is okay to have misgivings about engaging in infidelity. It is fine to want to resolve your infidelity situation in a manner that, ends the cheating. That's fine. We all get to decide what's okay with us and not okay with us, and what behaviors we want to engage in and not engage in. But in a situation like that, the one that I'm using as an example here, it is also essential that you recognize your desire for intimacy and sex and connection and affection and excitement and all of that as legitimate. You have to acknowledge what you are getting out of your infidelity situation that is important to you before you can resolve the contradiction it presents you with. And eschewing the benefits you are getting from your infidelity situation will not resolve the contradiction. You can't shame yourself into making sustainable, positive changes. Now, I want to make it really clear that acknowledging what is good about your infidelity situation does not dictate a particular course of action. Sometimes people are afraid that if they, for example, acknowledge what they love about their affair partner as an individual or love about their relationship with them, they will then be destined to leave their spouse and their family and run off with their affair partner, and all sorts of mayhem will ensue. But that isn't necessarily what will happen at all. And moreover, even if you decided that you wanted to do that, you don't have to choose to act on that desire. But if you can't be honest with yourself about what you want, you won't be able to make clear choices about what you're going to do. And that just isn't a recipe for anything great. So if you're doing something you'd rather not be doing in your love life, or you're doing something you think you shouldn't be doing in your love life, I want you to see if you can slow down, sit yourself down and ask yourself what you're getting out of doing whatever it is that you're doing that you think you shouldn't be doing. And allow yourself to be really curious about your answers to this question. Take some time to explore this question and think of as many answers as you can. Some of your answers may surprise you, and that's great. This information will ultimately help you figure out what you want to do to resolve your contradictions. But before you can effectively take action, you've got to have a clear understanding of how the situation benefits you. And being honest with yourself about this may be a little scary or weird, but I promise that it is part of the process of finding you relief and freedom from what is troubling you, from the contradictions in your life. All right, everyone, that's it for today. If you would like my help resolving a contradiction in your love life, let's work together. You can schedule an introductory coaching session with me through my website, mariemurphyphd.com. I look forward to working with you. And if you've enjoyed what you've heard today, I hope you'll head on over to iTunes to rate and review the show. Thanks for listening, everyone, and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.